interesting thing. It was no accident that this last Old Testament writing, as a matter of fact, the last chapter of the Old Testament writing, as a matter of fact, the last words of the Old Testament actually combine Jesus as the Son, S-U-N, S-O-N, of righteousness, and Moses and Elijah. Malachi chapter 4, verses 4 to 6.
Remember the law of Moses, my servant, even the statutes and ordinances which I commanded him in Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I am going to send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. He will restore the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, for that I will not come and smite the land with a curse. Okay, so we know that this Malachi prophecy ties into our discussion with the Mount of Transfiguration because get this, it's the only other place in Scripture where Moses, Elijah, and a representation of Jesus as the SUN of righteousness are all mentioned together.
Right. Now, remember, we mentioned that this prophecy does have a dual meaning. It had a meaning that applied at Jesus' first advent and a meaning that applies as Jesus comes to his second advent. And here's what we know. We know absolutely it had a meaning to apply in his first advent because John the Baptist was highlighted here as pictured by Elijah. And we know that because the angel Gabriel said to Zacharias when John's birth was foretold, he actually quotes this scripture. Let's look at Luke 1:16 and 17.
And he will turn many of the sons of Israel back to the Lord their God. It is he, speaking of this baby, this John the Baptist, who will go as a forerunner before him in the spirit and power of Elijah. And then he quotes that phrase from Malachi 4:6 that we just read, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children and the disobedient to the attitude of the righteous, so as to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. So the angel makes this direct connection for us that someone like an Elijah the prophet would come on the scene to prepare the people for the Lord. And John the Baptist, we know, was that Elijah.
And that's powerful because these are the last words of the Old Testament. And the first actions of the New Testament are the prophecy of John being born. So you can see it just picks up only 400 years in between, but it picks up exactly where the Old Testament left off. The Old Testament prophesies, the New Testament fulfills.